After making High Tension and The Hills of Eyes, I was looking for a new movie, something, different. For a long time, I wanted to be able to explore the other side of the genre. You have on one side, very realistic, very violent, graphic kind of horror movie, and on the other side, you have the Shining kind of movie, where it's also very scary, but in the same time, it's dealing with supernatural stuff and things that we can't understand or things that goes beyond our world.
Michael, look at me.
We met Alexandre Aja, who was working on a project called Into the Mirror, and she asked us if we were interested to do the movie and if you want to read the script.
The reason mirrors are a perfect theme for a horror movie is because they really embody the fear that human beings have in terms of trying to make sense of the reality they live in.
The subject was very interesting about mirrors, and we were disappointed after reading the script. We were thinking that the concept was very strong, and the script wasn't as good as it should be.
I was talking with Greg, and we were realizing we didn't know any movie dealing with mirrors, and that mirrors were, everyday life everywhere, and it was something very universal and something which everyone has a different relationship with.
So we came back to her and say, sorry, the concept is great, but I think you missed the concept of the movie, and we are not ready to do this movie. And she said, but it's based from a Korean movie, you should see it. So that was a big surprise because nobody told us that it was from an original movie. And we watched it, and we realized that the concept was as strong as we thought, and a lot of great scenes was in the movie.
I pitched him what I wanted to do with the movie, how I wanted to remake it. And it was very much a chance to redo The Shining. And that's how I got him.
Please, Miss Essiker, if you don't help me, I'm gonna lose the most important thing to me in this world, and that's my family.
I thought we might, be able to develop something, really new, starting from that point. So Greg and I went back to New Regency and we asked them, okay, let us start from scratches. Let us write another script.
He had a really different version of how he wanted to see the movie, and that was to have it where it's a burnt-out department store that was not rebuilt and not working. And just the scariness of that really took the whole project to another level.
You can create everything with mirrors because they are just everywhere. How many times a day, an average human being is going to look at himself into a reflection?
Pour moi, la plus grande question était comment allons-nous faire peur avec des miroirs?
Most obvious thing is about mirrors is when you break a mirror, it's 7 years of bad luck. That's something that everybody knows, but it's impossible to build a story around this myth.
It's not only the mirror in your bathroom, it's like the rear view mirrors, the reflection of your window, the car, the building, the shop, the water, everywhere.
It's like when you're in a restaurant. You do not want to have that chair that's facing the mirror because somehow we are just so entranced by our own reflection. I think it's because we walk through life not seeing how we do anything.
It's it makes you feel very paranoid at one point. Because when you start thinking like that, you start thinking that the mirrors are not the one that you are looking at, but the one that's looking back at you. As a filmmaker, I always have the same rule. Even if I'm dealing with something supernatural, I want people to believe in it. Because I think if you try to do a scary movie or a horror movie So if you want to create fear in the audience, you have to make them believe in what you're saying. For me, as an audience member, the only thing that worked for me is when I'm not watching a movie anymore and then I'm like just crossing the screen to be with the character, living the story, living the nightmare. And for me, Kiefer Sutherland in Flatliners is one of the most interesting characters I've seen in the movie. He's always on the edge. He's a very romantic character in a very philosophical way. That was exactly the character of Ben Carson in Mirrors. So the idea of Kiefer Sutherland came very fast.
I had a meeting with Alex Aja, who was the director of the film, before I even got the script. And he described to me the story and what he wanted to make. I was very aware of all of the points that were frightening for the movie, but what caught me off guard was how dramatic the film was.
What he told me the first time we met, I'm taking care of the drama, you're taking care of the scare. He's a big star, and it could have just, come, do his stuff, and disappear, and that wasn't the case.
He said he had been working on the script for like 6 months before, and he knew everybody's line in the script. I mean, he's just like, he's so committed to making the best projects.
For this thing, Kiefer was really, for us, not our guide, but our kind of protector for the movie that we want to do.
How you doing today?
I'm fine, I feel a lot better. I'm leaving in a couple minutes.
Are you sure you're all right?
Please, not you.
Okay, I'm just saying. You can talk to me if you want. I'm your little sister.
We wanted someone that can be Kiefer Sutherland's sister, and which will be really believable and at the same time completely different from him. The choice of Amy Smart came very, very, soon.
I play Angela Carson. I'm Kiefer's younger sister.
You think I'm crazy, don't you?
I don't know what to think. I think you're just going through a hard time in your life.
We've been through hard times in our family, and I'm the person he turns to when things happen in his life. I really liked working with Kiefer a lot because I felt like, we didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare, and we had to play brother and sister, and for that to come across believable on camera, it takes time to develop some type of relationship that will read on screen.
Well, what was really helpful for me with that was she was actually there with her brother. And they were really close. And so all I had to do was take them out to dinner and watch them for a night and just joke about the two of them. And then I felt like I was included somehow. Happy birthday.
Thanks, Dad.
Hey.
We were really looking for someone who could play Kiefer Sutherland's wife. She's a coroner, he was an ex-cop, they met on duty.
Are you okay then?
I play Amy Carson. She's this strong woman, and she's taken into this world of fear, and she has to tackle it. So I thought that's a fun character to play.
Paula Patton was an interesting original choice. I think the alchemy between Kiefer and Paula is really, really strong, and people will feel that they really, care for each other.
What I want is for you to respect my needs.
Amy, I'm doing everything I can to respect your needs. I haven't had a drink. I got a new job to hold me over till I'm reinstated. I'm doing everything I can to get back on my feet again.
From that couple, we had to find the two kids. Michael and Daisy were so important in the story. Cameron and Erica, the two kids, were just troopers. They came in Eastern Europe with their family and they stayed here and they were so excited and they were not scared about what we were making. And believe me, it was really, really scary, to see all those makeup and all that blood and all that stuff on set. It was not something for 8-year-old kids.
Action. We got the chance to have Erica and Cameron, who are just perfect and very good actor, and it was almost scary as they were so professional.
He's way older than me. And I'm not acting scared, but he is. Doesn't make any sense.
Michael? What are you doing?
Nothing.
Okay, well, you gotta get going, all right?
Okay.
Okay.
It's true that Alex and I speak French on the set. I think it was a little bit disturbing for the rest of the crew. People like talking about the next scene in French. The fact that our DP is a Belgian who speaks, of course, French doesn't help the thing, because when we start to talk with him, it's like no, like the two of us, but three people who are speaking French.
Alex's movies are challenging because he's got people from Italy, he's got people from France, he's got people from the UK. Fortunately, a lot of us had worked together on The Hills Have Eyes, and we knew each other.
It was funny because, you know, they'd yell action or cut in 3 different languages before you, like, and action, and, you know, you'd hear it, like, down the line until you were like, okay, now you can go. So that was funny, but really everybody got along well, and sign language works wonders.
Well, you know, the great thing about Alex is he storyboards every single effect sequence.
But this is what's going to happen in the basement of the Mayflower, of the department store.
He knows what the frame is, he knows what the shot is, and he's one of the few directors that I've worked with where he draws it, and then you get on set, and hey, look, it looks just like the drawing. And he sticks really religiously to it.
He's always working, he's always thinking, he's always trying to find solutions, and he has a great vision, and he wants everyone to work as hard as him. And I think it really shows in the final product.
With Alex, we don't like to waste time on the set. We know what we want, that's why we like to go as fast as we can. Our main concern was where we're gonna shoot this movie. The story takes place in New York. Where we're gonna find this department store.
And we wanted the feeling of like a huge, gigantic ghost ship abandoned in the earth of New York City. The kind of stage, the kind of look, the kind of location I had in mind was not even possible to build on the stage. So I was thinking about place and location, and I remember that a few years ago when we were like scouting for another movie in Bucharest, in Eastern Europe, we found that amazing building that was completely unfinished and abandoned. And the reason why was because Ceausescu, when he was in Romania, he destroyed most of Bucharest, and he started to build that gigantic building for the Academy of Science and the National Library and everything. But the revolution came before he could finish everything. So most of the building were just left there unfinished.
The Academia that we used for the interior of the Mayflower, the front of it has a lot of governmental offices in it, but it's probably a fifth or sixth of the entire structure that's there, and the rest of it is just big bits of concrete with reinforcing bars still sticking out of it.
This set was so huge that we need like 2 months of set dressing and to rebuild this building. It was like a huge, huge work that we start from day one and we finish the day before to shoot.
It was very challenging for Joseph Nemec to complete all the sets he needed to build, both at the Academy and then on the stage that we shot at, under the time frame that we had, with the money we had.
All this is unfinished now, by the way. It's all raw concrete. All that was there was the basic structure that held the building up.
The place was just bare walls, concrete, and when you see the result and when you see how it looks in the movie, it's just like another place. I mean, Joseph created everything. He built all the column over some pre-existing column, but also some from nowhere, and he has to, you know, like make all the mirrors, and he has to give a look that everything burned down. So it was really like creating the place very clean and exactly the way it was like 5 years ago, and then burn down the place.
Everything's been burned. Well, of course, everything we're buying has just come out of this nice little Chinese bit of plastic wrapping. We do the whole thing for real. All the displays, all the dressing of the mannequins, the costumes. And then we came out with what we called the flame team. And this is basically 2 guys literally with, you know, propane-powered flamethrowers, and basically hand-burned everything.
As an actor, when you come on a set like this, and it is as real and pliable as this set is, there's an incredible amount of freedom because it's 365 degrees. So If I want to do a full circle, if I want to move in this direction or that direction, I can. I don't have to worry about there's no wall over here.
You know, the Meredith family acquired this building after St. Matthew's Hospital closed in 1952. It was the very first Mayflower to open on the East Coast.
It's been I think it's definitely the biggest location I ever lit. Playing just with each little hole that came through from those huge windows that we had in the main entrance. That was basically the only way of lighting the huge windows and what we call the cupola, which was the ceiling of the Mayflower. And it's a little bit tricky, mixing daylight and night light in the same kind of ambiance without shocking the interior and the exterior lights. But the color palette needed highlights, really highlights, to get something into the dark. With black walls, everything you had on the frame was absolutely black. You needed really high and strong lights to unstick each object to another one.
Ladies department, you want to be careful here. Sometimes that glass shakes loose, comes crashing down. You wouldn't want to get hit by any of that, you know what I'm saying?
The Mayflower set was so big and so huge and so gigantic that we used some of the space to create our own other soundstage, where we built the Angela's apartment, where we built the morgue, when we built the dressing room and many others.
And then the opening scene inside the locker room, which becomes the police lieutenant's office, it was revamped into that, was built in that same space as well. And then just off of that space was the whole sort of farmhouse basement set.
I helped my father fix up this part of the basement, especially for her. Her fits were too violent. My mother couldn't take her screams anymore.
They built this whole bedroom set of mine, my whole apartment scene, down in this basement in this place that we were shooting, and it felt so eerie there. All of the spirits that were lingering in this big space were somehow the energy of it was coming on to the film.
When you're making a movie with mirrors, you have to think about a completely different way of making the movie, because mirrors means reflection, and reflection means you're going to see all the crew, you're going to see all the camera, you have to be very careful. And when you look at the movie and when you see how many mirrors we broke enough mirrors to have bad luck for like 1 million years. All of us. You know, all the crew and all the family of the crew, it's like bad luck forever.
Every day trying to make sure that the camera's not in there, the crew's not in the mirrors. So it's real difficult. And then they add water onto that because, you know, water was the first reflective surface that people looked into and could see their reflection. And it adds its own, you know, host of problems when you're shooting with water.
If you ever came over to my house, I have no mirrors in my house. A friend of mine and I were talking about it. I hadn't thought about the irony of that I was doing this picture, because I don't like mirrors. I don't like looking at myself very much. I think I have one in the bathroom, and I think I have one in the closet just to make sure I've got the right socks on.
You know, there's not that many mirrors available everywhere in the same time, and we were shooting in Eastern Europe at that time, and so that was really the first thing that, you know, like Joseph Nemec, Greg and I, and Alexandre and Mark, the producer, were like dealing with when we arrived in Bucharest was, let's find the mirrors.
The mirror room, that was another one of those sets that we knew the importance of it. I mean, even before we actually started, I sat down on the computer and designed what the set was going to be like and how we felt that it might interact with the sidewalks of New York up above, and how we would let that play with part of the lighting in the set, and working with the script notes about how we would break through the wall to get into this area.
Shooting the mirror room and creating the mirror room was just like the most challenging set, because you have to realize such a room, you have to think about, okay, you have like an infinity of reflection. So if I go inside, even with one camera and with nobody else, am I going to be safe? No way. Because any angle will create like thousands of reflection that even the best CGI house cannot erase. we came with the idea of, okay, let's do something else. Let's imagine that if it's a medical room, let's say that they will have created that room with two-way mirrors, so they can stay outside, I mean the doctors and everyone, they can stay outside and look at the patient inside.
The maximum size that we could get was 5 feet by 10 feet, and our areas were wider than that, so we had thinner ones either side to make it up, and we made it work as part of the design. But lifting up a piece of glass, almost as tall as a person is, 1.5 times as long, it would take 3 men with those great big whopping glass suction handle things, to handle a piece of this glass.
When you think about mirrors, you think about how you're going to photograph those mirrors. And I'm always working with the same DP, Maxime Alexandre, and he's really, for him it was a big challenge because he knew that most of the shots will involve reflection, and sometimes even we were working with two-way mirrors, so he had to change all the lighting for that. And also the amount of light that you have in real, it's kind of diminished with the reflection of the mirror, so you have to balance that all together. It was not an easy job, and it was a big challenge.
As a DP, you receive the script, and the title is Mirrors. It's a huge taboo, in fact. It's been like a game. It's been really like a game. I mean, you're always getting with the camera at the edge of your own reflection. All our movies are quite a challenge. They are quite. It's a really good genre for cinematographers lead because sometimes you can play with lights more than in a normal genre movie.
Thank God you didn't show up any later. This place gives me the creeps at night.
If you get somebody in the mirrors and this body in the foreground and you want that this reflection is desynchronized, you need to shoot the scene twice. First, him in the mirrors moving, and the second take, you need him moving.
It's a movie that could have been made in the 70s. What I mean is, it's a movie that is very heavy in visual effect, but in the same time, it's dealing with visual effect very seamless. Something that needs to be so real, like your reflection staying in the mirror when you're walking away. And that kind of optical effect that we used to do, like in the 70s, 60s, of course, we are doing it now with computer, but that's not more simple or more. It's only required the same amount of work where you have to be really precise and you have to be sure that, like the two images are matching, because what you're doing is you're shooting twice. You're shooting what is in the reflection and you're shooting what is in the foreground. And then you do a composite of the two frames together to get the idea that, like the reflection is not in sync anymore with the reality of what's happening.
This process is called a double pass. That was a tricky part, and that's, during production, something that takes time, and you need to take the time to do it well. What I learned on this movie is to not shoot with mirrors anymore. That's the thing, no more mirrors.
Nothing is CG in the mirrors exploding. Nothing is fake. Everything is real. We made all those mirrors explode. The only thing that we add then is the soul trapped in the mirrors being released by the mirrors. But all the debris, all the pieces of mirrors exploding are real.
That kind of scene need like sometimes 3 days of prep. You just have one take and you need to prep well. For that kind of thing, we use 6 cameras. We had broke like 30 mirrors. We did it with 3 different setups of 6 cameras.
You can't blow the actual mirrors up because they're not silvered anymore. There's actually a very thin, almost plasticized type of mirror coating on the back. And you can't blow that because sometimes you can blow it and you make it break, but what happens is sometimes because of the plastic coating, it will hold bigger bits together.
We managed to get something which was very efficient, It's not maybe exactly as big as we wanted to be, but it's pretty scary and pretty unexpected at the end of that movie. At one point, our protagonists manage to understand what's going on, and so they decide to neutralize all the reflection in the house. So they're covering all the mirrors, but not only the mirrors, they're covering all the TV screen, the windows, and everything that could reflect. But what they are not thinking about is, you know, if the mirrors manage to take the control of the water and overflow the house, that will be like a thin, you know, like layer of water everywhere that create the mirrors, and that will make like just a huge mirror extending in the house. In the script, it's very easy to say, okay, the whole house is flooded with water, and you see the reflection everywhere. And then when you're writing that, you know, the whole basement is flooded, that you have to think about building stage that can hold the water. So Joseph Nemec really built everything around the water system. The upstairs floor was built right above the water and with like a few meters of water underneath, so we could have the kid catch his own reflection and we could have water everywhere. So that was a very smart and interesting way of building.
Michael?
The water is flooding the house, and basically it's, you know, somebody upstairs leaves the tap on. It might cover the floor, and then it runs down the stairs. We wanted to hold it in, but we didn't really need to hold in much more than kind of a, you know, 3/4 of an inch to get the mirrored effect that we wanted. You buy all those places at doors where it would run out. On the other side of the threshold, we just put a slot so that the water would run over the top and then just drain down into the tank down below that we had built.
That corridor was endless, and the water level was, you know, almost 3 feet or something like that everywhere. We had to heat that water so Kiefer and the stand person were not like freezing. But even with trying to heat the water, we couldn't manage to get it very hot, so I think they were really freezing to death.
That's a pleasure for Alex and I to work with prosthetics. On this movie, we got like 2 or 3 scenes, which was handled by Greg Nicotero and his company K&B.
My first experience with Alex Aja was on The Hills Have Eyes. They had sent me up a DVD copy of High Tension. It was really a fascinating movie. I loved his style. You know, certainly the kind of person that is very technically savvy about how to compose his shots and which techniques he wants to use, whether it's CGI or whether it's makeup or prosthetics.
When we start working on mirrors, it was just obvious that the only person that could create such a scene that the Joe reaping or the lady burning in the dressing room or the Anna Seeker being a demon again was Greg Nicotero and his guys, and they did an amazing job.
The first challenge was coming up with the concept of what the demon looks like. You know, one of the ideas that we came up with was the idea that her pupils are actually split into 2, so that there's 2 people inhabiting the same body. We had custom contact lenses made that looked as it was like cellular mitosis. It was almost as if they were replicating into 2 separate eyeballs. So we also really wanted to play with the idea that due to the explosion from the mirrors, that there was a lot of damage done to Anna. So the tip of her nose was sliced off. There was all these big, giant chunks of glass and mirror that were embedded in her face. Prosthetic-wise, we flattened her face, and we actually made custom dentures that had a lot of extra gum on the tip of it, so that it looked as if the lips had pulled back, revealing a lot of gum and broken teeth. And it was real sharp and real sort of creepy looking. We really wanted to come up with some imagery that was unique and unsettling, and we certainly didn't want to do something that we had seen before. Andy Schoenberg, who's a brilliant sculptor, works at K&B with us, sculpted a likeness makeup of Mary Beth on the stunt girl, and then we translated the demon concept onto the sculpture. So basically we were recreating the actress's face on the stunt girl and then creating the sliced off nose and all the cuts and abrasions from the explosion of the mirror. It was a really successful marriage of a likeness makeup and this creepy demon. There was a sequence where Cameron gets pulled basically into the mirror. And there's a moment where you see him sort of drifting down into nothingness.
Playing with the kids under the water, we had to train them to go in the water. You know, like Cameron and Michael was going into the pool diving, and we had some diver with them to explain and to make them comfortable. And for some of the shots, which are just impossible to make, we had Kane be doing a full double of Michael, you know, as a puppet.
So we did a full-body replica of Cameron. You know, he's a great little kid. He had a great face. It was like really big, long eyelashes and freckles, and we did a dummy of him that we built so that not only was it jointed, but we actually built an air bladder in the chest that we could blow into. So when Paula's actually giving him CPR, she's blowing into the mouth of the dummy, and the chest is inflating and deflating.
That dummy in particular was done because we're going to need a section of the film where the kid is in water. And sometimes, you know, younger kids, they don't do so well underwater, they have regulators and diving and all that kind of stuff. So you need him to do like a dead man's fall where he's dropping, you know, literally 15 feet into a tank of water and not moving. It's really hard for a child to do that kind of thing. So we made a dummy basically as a stand-in that works perfectly. And then we would add airbags to it to make it rise for the reverse angles of the shot. And then also there's a CPR scene. And rather than have him laying there twitching and his eyes moving when he's supposed to be, you know, dead and she's bringing him back, it's easier to work with something that's not going to move at all.
And it was so unbelievable to see the puppet and the real Michael like side to side. They were like really so close and so perfectly made.
I had two main people on location, Mike McCarty, who was our supervisor, and Jeremy Aiello, who was a great, great sculptor. And he was the assistant makeup on the show. So, you know, those guys were there for the duration of the shoot, and I kind of traveled back and forth between Romania and Los Angeles as we were continuing to build things, and then we'd finish up the demon makeup, and then I would fly back. So I was kind of jumping back and forth. And then once we get one you like, if you want, we'll...
So when we do the meal, then how much time you need to for the best?
Jeremy would be given an idea and he would sculpt something, and then we would take pictures, send it to Alex, who was already here, and we were back in LA. And then he would make comments and say, make this bigger, make that smaller, add a little more here, a little less here, there. And then Jeremy would alter it. So yeah, he was pretty much hands-on from the very beginning. I mean, we were talking about this film probably, I would say 4 months before we ever actually got here, which is good because a lot of time things move a little too quickly. And you know, you get a call from a production and they say, yeah, we need a severed head of so-and-so in 8 days.
Mike and Jeremy were really the guys in the trenches during the whole shoot and did a great job. I mean, there was a lot of burn makeups and there was a lot of really sort of shocking imagery. You know, there's the great scene where Kiefer's walking through the abandoned department store and he hears this noise and he sort of goes into the dressing room and there's this woman writhing on the floor and literally burning up in front of us. And that was one of the first things that we tested in Los Angeles because we used a variety of prosthetics. We actually hired a friend of Mike's, and this girl came into the shop and we did various stages of makeup on her, and we dissolved the stages over top of each other. So we had her do the same movement 4 different times with 4 different stages of burn makeup, each more severe than the stage before, to the point where, you know, we had burned part of her hair off. And we dissolved those 4 together, and then we actually put a smoke element on it. So it literally looked like she was burning up.
In the morgue set was very interesting because the idea was, okay, let's find a real morgue and let's go and shoot inside. And we were scouting with the producer and with Greg, and we were like looking at all the morgue. And at one point we get to a place, and you know, just before we push the door, the lady from the place turned and, oh, you don't mind, there is a real dead body inside. And we were like all looking at ourselves and was, okay, this is kind of real, you know.
was a bunch of different corpses that we had created for the film. And there was one specific corpse that she was supposed to be working on, and Alex and I had talked about. I wanted it to be a drowned victim. So we went with, actually, I did a life cast of my cousin's girlfriend, Katie. So we did a head cast of her, and the guys basically translated her face cast into a version of what she would have looked like if she would have been waterlogged and drowned and sort of puffy. And I don't think she was quite excited about how she ended up looking in the movie. But it was just one of those things that I thought would be interesting, aside from just seeing a normal corpse on the table all the time, that we would see something that was a little more realistic.
The favorite horror scene is Amy Smart's jaw ripping. I mean, and I think Alex will mention that to you, too. I think that's one of the reasons he wanted to make the movie.
I think the jaw ripping scene is gonna be one of the scenes that people will remember forever because it's so, wow, in your face.
There are some iconic images that kind of, you know, you'll never forget. You know, certainly for this film, that is an iconic moment.
I was really excited to do the scene because I've never done anything like it before. Basically had to be naked getting into the bathtub, which, you know, I'm a little modest.
We discussed about the scene, and she realized very fast that that scene will be kind of a cult phenomenon around, and that she will be able to be remembered for that scene, even if the part was not that big for her.
She goes in the bathtub, first starts standing at the mirror. She turns away from the mirror and gets into the bathtub, and her reflection stays. And you know that that's the sort of demonic possessed reflection. The idea that the reflection rips up and reaches up and sort of wrenches the jaw free. Then we had to match that action on her in the bathtub. We life cast Amy, and then Jeremy did a really great dimensional sculpture.
They made a cast of my head as well as my whole body, and then go back and get the whole prosthetic actually adjusted and put on.
We cheated out her lips and we cheated her nose out a little bit, and then simulated this as a big torn away section. When you look at it straight on, even by just painting her real chin dark and adding fake teeth into the prosthetic, when you're looking at it straight on, it looks like you're looking at a big black hole. If you looked at it from the side, you would probably notice, oh, well, there's a real chin. But then, of course, by adding the fake chin piece on top of it and then putting a fake tongue over it and little bits of torn flesh, it's a great optical illusion. You know, I mean, there wasn't any digital augmentation of removing her chin or any of that kind of stuff when you're looking at it in the mirror. We basically had it as if she were dislocating her jaw from the back.
Doing it in the mirror, that's one thing. But then when I was in the bathtub, like my skin's pruning, it's red, like gross, bloody looking bathtub. I was just like so grossed out at that point, just like, what am I doing in here?
We had blood tubing running into the bathtub. Jeremy and I were pumping blood, and Mike McCarty had the chin attached to a green rod. So we'd get this camera set up, they'd start rolling, and Mike would position the chin just at the right point where it looked like it was sat where it should be. And then on action, Mike would puppeteer the chin by bending it and pulling it away and ripping it. The idea always was that the visual effects people would then go in and do a CG blend so that they could blend the chin onto the real actress's face. So for those few frames prior to the chin coming off, it looked like it was intact in one piece. And then all of a sudden, magically in front of our eyes, the wound opens up and the chin is torn for the rest of her face. It was pretty intense. It was pretty brutal.
Overall, it was a really good experience. Alex was very helpful, though, because he knew it was a hard scene, and he really kind of came in with some notes here and there and being really supportive.
When I look at the Korean movie, I really love the idea that your reflection stop to be in sync with yourself and make you do stuff that you don't want to do. And that your reflection is forcing you to kill yourself. And it's a very interesting way of using the mirrors and the world of the mirrors and the demonic force inside the mirrors. And then the other scene that really, you know, like, wow, blew me away in the Korean movie was the ending, because I didn't see the ending coming. I saw so many screenings of the movie where people were like, oh no, come on. How can he survive? I mean, the whole building collapsed on that guy. How can he survive? And he went, oh, no, that's not possible. And as a sudden, when he changed his face, when his face dropped and he sees that everything is backward, the audience was the same, like silence back. He said, oh no. And you see all the reaction of the people in the room like, oh shit, he's dead, he's inside the mirrors.
In the original movie, we did it in a different way, but it's something that just feels organic and right, and it's just kind of really packs a punch. So when you leave the theater, you're talking about it.
La fin du film, en fait, Ben Carson se retrouve dans le monde du miroir. Donc pour nous, c'était assez simple, parce qu'il a juste fallu, on dit, un terme de cinéma, flipper l'image. Et Ben Carson s'est donc retrouvé avec un monde à l'envers. Les inscriptions dans la rue se sont retrouvées à l'envers. Les inscriptions police sur les voitures de police étaient à l'envers. Donc visuellement, je pense que c'est un effet qui marche très bien, parce que imaginons-nous un jour de se retrouver dans un monde complètement à l'envers. Je pense que c'est assez terrifiant. Mais à fabriquer, c'est très simple. On a juste procédé en mettant un petit effet sur ma machine, sur les plans, et on s'est retrouvé avec toute une série de plans à l'envers. Et voilà, c'est vraiment ce qu'il y a de plus simple à fabriquer. Je pense que n'importe quel monteur, apprenti monteur sur son ordinateur peut faire ce type d'effet.
Just the idea that the protagonist is coming out and everything is backward, and you slowly finding out that he's trapped on the world of the mirrors, that he's dead. Soul is trapped in the mirrors and he's like almost condemned to be forever on the other side. It's very, very creepy and interesting, and it's that kind of twist that you don't expect. It's the same playful game where it's very entertaining to try to create fear and play with the audience. And that ending gave me a really, really good opportunity of, you know, like manipulating and having a lot of fun with the audience. Baxter, who's the editor that starts with us on High Tension and being like, you know, so important in the process. He did High Tension, he did The Hills of Eyes, he did Mirrors. It's like a family.
This movie is a little bit tricky for an editor, because you have to deal with scares, tension, suspense, and you need to keep this suspense and fear, and at the same time be with your lead character to follow what he's doing.
Le tournage du film a commencé au mois de mai, donc le 7 mai, et j'ai commencé tout de suite à faire le montage. On a reçu les premières rushs, les premières dailies une semaine après le début du tournage, et j'ai pu travailler tout seul pendant une dizaine de semaines, sans Alexandre Aja, sans Grégory Levasseur. Et quand ils sont revenus de Roumanie, de Bucarest, je leur ai proposé 50 minutes de film monté. Bon, il n'y avait pas tout, mais j'avais pas mal avancé. Et après, on a repris le film depuis le début, à Paris.
I had the chance to work with Javier Navarrete, who's like the most interesting and the most unique composer, like millions of people with the Pan's Labyrinth soundtrack.
Alex is a music lover, and the thing is, before he started the film, he was already working with music, listening to music a lot, getting inspired by music.
We knew that it was not only scares and suspense that sound design can provide, but also emotion. And Javier did an amazing job.
music in horror films is very experimental. It allows you to experiment a lot. Comedy or in drama, the composer has to be very much in a code which is much more conventional or classical.
Porter un travail exceptionnel. Il a travaillé très vite, très bien. Il a mis beaucoup de temps à trouver la bonne direction, mais une fois qu'il l'a trouvé, ça rentrait, c'était parfait.
He knows when he has to put music, and sometimes we ask him to put some music, and he says, no, you don't need music here, it's great, it's great.
This is a great opportunity for a composer to do something new, something that will give the voice to the mirrors, and that's exactly what I needed. I needed a voice for the mirrors, and that's what Javier did.
The hardest part is you have to watch many times the same scary thing because you score against the film and there's no escape.
Scary films are very hard for me to watch. Alex has more style than you can imagine. I mean, he's just a genius director with style, and he'll do things that are off-center when most people would just kind of stay in the middle of the road. He's always to the left or to the right. No other genre of film is going to give you the visceral reaction that you get from a horror film. Alex Aja and I can craft a scene and make a moment that we know is going to lift you out of your seat. It makes you feel kind of naughty when you're doing it, but it's a lot of fun.
Supernatural kind of Ring, Grudge, that kind of film. They're not expecting to see something that's going to be, wow, this is wild. This is like really shocking. This is really like not expecting. And for me, this is the only way to scare them enough that when they wake up the next morning and they look at themselves in the mirror, they will just cover the mirrors or like just run away from that reflection.
The mirror speaks truth, and it speaks truth in a very direct fashion.
Part of the danger of mirrors, of course, is they also show you something that you might not be wanting to see.
Mirrors somehow have been reserved in our mythology as some kind of purgatory.
We see more of the pagan world using these mirrors than we do anybody else.
I think mirrors do have this underlying symbol of bringing light to things that we don't understand.
A mirror takes our internal sense of being and present, allows us to recognize, wow, I exist beyond sort of the internal.
It's a great way to give you an alter ego. The mirror shows reflection, so while the person is doing one thing, the mirror can show you the real person, the inner person, doing something else.
The reason mirrors are a perfect theme for a horror movie is because they really embody the fear that human beings have in terms of trying to make sense of the reality they live in, which is, who am I really?
I tell you, it's like, now the seed is planted in my subconscious, and I think, you know, every time I sort of see a reflection, I don't think I'm gonna see something, but the thought is there.
They're everywhere.
What are you talking about?
The fucking mirrors, they are everywhere.
We were stunned by, how many people, how many writers, artists thought about the mirrors for centuries as something else than just glass and silver.
When mirrors became really tangible in Greece, immediately the mythology was that your soul could be trapped in the plane of a mirror, of its own reflection.
The story of Narcissus is attested in a few places in Greco-Roman tradition, but the most famous version is that told by Ovid in Book 3 of the Metamorphoses. And that's the story where there's this young, handsome man, Narcissus. He's about 15 or 16, and everybody's in love with him, but he's not in love with anybody. He's left alone in the woods, and he goes to this beautiful pool. The mirror kind of traps him, his image in the water, and he can't ever pull away from it, and so eventually he wastes away to almost nothing and is then transformed into the flower Narcissus.
He falls in love with what is reflected of himself and misses the bigger picture of existence. And you'll see this in story after story after story, that the image, the reflections in mirrors, cause us to behave inappropriately.
Well, the earliest purpose-made mirrors were polished sheets of metal, usually bronze, but people would also use their bronze shields to see their reflections and images.
When you look at the story of Perseus and slaying Medusa using a mirrored shield, the mirror is a magical object simply because what it lets you do with light. The magic of the mirror is that it changes the dimension of sight so that I can look here and see something over there. It becomes a hero's attribute that enables him to beat and defeat an otherwise undefeatable creature.
And this use of a mirror to deflect magic is really common in folklore worldwide. It's still found in Northern Africa, where the mirror keeps away the evil eye, and in Central and Eastern Asia, where the mirror is used to reflect demons. Demons who see themselves in the mirror will be frightened away and not come into your house.
Mirrors were protective devices, and there are inscriptions on some of them that indicate that the owner of the mirror, by holding it, would have protection against any sort of negative influence. So, for example, a ghost or a nature spirit that was trying to hide itself wouldn't be able to hide itself from a mirror. That's one reason why they were thought to protect their owners.
Chinese mirrors are decorated on the backs with designs that are mythological or cosmological.
Around the 8th or 9th century AD, you started to get these flower petal shapes, typically with 8 petals, and it's thought that that's from the influence of Buddhism. The lotus flower is a very important symbol in Buddhism, and it's thought that maybe the flower shape may have come into China along with the introduction of Buddhism.
If you look at particularly ways in which mirrors come into ritual practice, is one as just this idea of reflecting the face of the worshipers, reflecting the truth of spiritual presence. So you will find mirrors worked into altars and shrines and sacred spaces throughout the world. So you have beliefs that, for instance, well, if somebody dies in the household, or you're having a wake in the household, frequently you'll see folks say, well, you better cover the mirror.
The Jewish religion is covering all the mirrors when someone dies in the house, so you have to cover everything. And most of the interpretation of that rite is, and why they are doing that, is because you have to renounce to vanity during the mourning time.
And it's not limited to the Jewish culture, actually. There are some Native American tribes that will do it also. So mirrors are covered in one sense so that you go towards the right light, towards the right doorway. And in another sense, it is so that the person does leave and doesn't stay and doesn't bring in more spirits with them.
I mean, this is really serious business for people, because if you believe in the idea of the soul, and if mirrors are conceptualized as things that can capture spirit, you have to be careful that it doesn't capture somebody's essence.
In the 14th century, we've got Pope John the 22nd that issues a papal bull saying that anyone who uses a mirror to foretell the future is going to be excommunicated. And we get the Inquisition pursuing people who are using mirrors to divine the future. It becomes understood as a kind of black magic.
Those who are more into the ancient religions have more of a connection to, say, being open to spirit worlds, being open to getting advice from the spirit world, being open to divining. They are not frightened by it.
What you see in the mirror isn't necessarily a reflection of the room you're in. It's the land of the dead. It's the other world. It's the future. It can even be the past.
Not only do they reflect light, but they also become portals to the other side, whether it be heaven or hell or the third dimension.
In front of me, I have 4 examples of 4 different kinds of magic mirrors, or what's called scrying mirrors, also known as black mirrors.
It's called catoptromancy, which is divination by mirror, or more simply scrying, using a surface that reflects to see what's going to happen or what is happening somewhere else.
Nostradamus divined, it is the idea of seeing things that are not there, or to be able to tell the future, to be able to prognosticate. There are those who would like to say, like Jungian psychologists, it's not necessarily something else as much as it's your subconscious now talking to your conscious mind. The conscious mind is taught. Spirits don't exist. Ghosts are not real. There is no boogeyman. There are no demons in this world. And the subconscious mind goes, yes, yes there is. And you still should be that scared child underneath those blankets. It's actually a shame that the mirrors don't have the greater reputation like the crystal ball does. The crystal ball has a reputation of being able to look into the crystal ball and seeing the future. The crystal ball is a doorway. It has windows and doors in it, inclusions in the natural quartz crystal. This makes it really hard to be able to see anything that's in it. The mirror is just a portal. It's actually a mirror. It can reflect upwards anything that's trying to talk to you, as it can reflect in anything that you're trying to say in. And so the mirror is actually the easiest of the divination and scrying tools. The flat mirrors are only for looking at pictures that would come across the mirror. And the convex mirrors, the ones that come upwards, would be to contact spirits, but not have any physical contact. In other words, you couldn't bring them in and out of this world, and they couldn't have any physical connection to you. You would take a mirror and you would place it at nose level. Your eyes are going to tend to somewhat close. And come down about a half. And then you're going to let yourself go into a meditative trance. And pictures are going to come up in this.
There's a number of rituals that survive for how to make a magic mirror, and they're all very complicated things.
They have metals that go around them. In the metals, you have fire and water. Water would be to banish into it. Fire would be to bring things up. In this case, with the copper around it, it's a protection seal. So you could bring things up, like spirits to talk to, but not bring them out. In the case of the silver mirror, with the silver border, this would be to send things into the spirit world. Some people use it for medicine, to banish, to cleanse. Some people do it so that they can actually send messages over to their loved ones or things that have passed over. Say somebody was possessed, a curandero or somebody who cures. They would take the mirrors and they would place it next to the person, drawing the spirit out and into the mirror and back into its portal. Then they would place a seal over it or a cover. There's one school of thought that says that they're actually trapped inside the mirror and therefore can be used, pulled in and out, and used at the magician's will. There are others who say that is simply a portal to what is called Da'ath, or to the tree of death, the demonic places. It's the 10 places of hell on the 9 trees and the 9 houses on the tree of death. And so you are simply sending it back to quote unquote hell. In some cases, what they would do is they would smash the mirror and therefore close off any portals so that there'd be no more connection to that demon. Other people believe that by smashing the mirror, you would be releasing the demon back. To break a mirror would be able to, would break the connection that you had with anything that was spiritual, thus being bad luck.
they reflect the future, they'll show you something that might be dangerous to see. So you don't want to break a mirror because in a sense you're breaking your soul, which is death.
These are, in many ways, they're sacred objects. They're sacred items. You don't break something that's inherently sacred and spiritually powerful and not pay a price. So 7 years bad luck to break a mirror? Of course.
In the medieval period, it was said that if you looked into a mirror too long, you would see the devil behind you. Mirrors being associated with vanity and other sins. There's a lot of other superstitions about the mirrors that involve people who are not supposed to look in it. Babies are not supposed to look into a mirror because then they might not develop properly. They might grow up not to speak, or they might die. You're not supposed to look into a mirror over somebody else's shoulder, or else you'll quarrel. Couples shouldn't look into a mirror. Brides shouldn't look into a mirror just before their wedding, lest that image of the bride alone come true. So brides usually will look into a mirror except for until they've put on their last glove or their last shoe. In Morocco, there's a tradition where the bride, on her way to the wedding, will carry a little mirror, very much like a makeup mirror, where it's enclosed in a box. And just at the moment when she is just married, when they are essentially pronounced man and wife, she'll open the box and look at their reflection in the mirror and then shut it quickly so that she'll seal that image of the marriage into the box and have that.
Folks often talk about urban legends or urban myths. A legend is a story about the fantastic that is generally set in known times and places and people. So it's a story that has all of the appearance of something that absolutely happened. So Bloody Mary is a classic contemporary legend.
There's a game that's played by young girls, either prepubescent or just pubescent, and boys play it too, but it is mostly girls, where on a sleepover or some occasion like that, you go into the bathroom, either by yourself or with a group, and in the darkness or by candlelight, you say to the mirror, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary 3 times.
Next thing you know, screams and blood, and Bloody Mary has come out of the mirror and killed the girl or taken her away or done some horrible thing to her.
The story uses the mirror as a way to kind of bifurcate the personality. So we've got you, and then the mirror represents the soul or the inner person. But part of the danger of mirrors, of course, is they also show you something that you might not be wanting to see. So not just your soul, but whatever invisible beings or forces are around the soul.
If you look at contemporary legend, you find a story about somebody, usually a guy, goes out, picks up a girl at the bar. One thing leads to another. One thing leads to an unprotected another, and in the morning the guy wakes up, girl's gone, he doesn't really care. It was a one-night stand. Goes into the bathroom, turns on the light, looks at his mirror, and somebody, we know who, has written, "Welcome to the world of AIDS" in red lipstick on his mirror. And she could have written it in lipstick a lot of places, but the mirror is the place symbolically to say, take a good look in the mirror, buddy. This is what happens when you have one-night stands. This is what happens when maybe you take advantage of women. This is what happens when you have unprotected sex. And so the mirror becomes sort of a site of moral value and of judgment, and in particular in this case, a site of revenge.
Everything is mirrors. You have that proverb in French, which is, I am everything and I am nothing. Who am I? I am the mirror. And that's exactly what a mirror is. So reflection, which is like, you know, the mirror is like everywhere and in everything.
All the new cities in the world are all about piles of mirrors. And there's a need for mankind to kind of, you know, say, forget the stone, let's show off and look at me.
The mirror is great for putting on makeup, you know, help us to do our hair, maybe check, you know, check our face, get everything together. But that's only half the story. In fact, that might only be about a quarter of the story. The rest of what mirrors can do is this idea of how much we can embed symbolically, conceptually into pieces of glass and stone.
I think that in modern times, we've lost our mysticism of ooh and ah. We certainly don't appreciate the history of it. We tend to look at things and we just look at them as objects. We don't want the ooh-ah behind it or the superstition because we don't want to seem ignorant.
The stories are one thing, but I think it's what psychologically it means to all of us. We all have a fear and an attraction of mirrors, whether we understand it or not.
The mirror has been a part of human culture and literature as long as we have records. But this idea of another self created by reflection is so powerful, and do magic with that, use that for information that other self can transform into things that you might or might not want to see. That's such a powerful notion. I don't see that we'd ever be rid of it or that we should be rid of it.